Thank you for joining us today to talk about 4 pieces of legislation that not only ban the oil and gas industry, but threaten the life we know today as Coloradans. These concepts range from banning development for any industry that requires an air permit in up to 50% of the state, to tracking and limiting how much you can drive your car. Ideas like this are harmful to the Colorado economy, and many of them are bad for the environment. Coloradans don't want this, just as the rest of Americans don't. Recent polling indicates that 88% of voters in America believe it's important to produce natural gas and oil right here in the United States as opposed to supporting our adversaries. These legislators should want that energy produced right here in Colorado, where we have some of the strictest regulations in the world. We have proven time and time again that we can meet and exceed environmental standards before us. We can produce this energy in this state while simultaneously lowering emissions. These policies ignore those realities and use a hammer approach to eliminate our industry. The truth is that these legislators aren't here representing Coloradans. They aren't contemplating the environmental consequences of these policies, the impact on consumers, or the countless jobs that will be lost. In our limited stakeholder interactions with the sponsors of these various bills, one thing has become abundantly clear. They are neither the authors nor the brainchildren of the legislation that they champion. Colorado's most environmental extremists, special interests draft, assign, and hide behind willing lawmakers in support of their singular goal of ending a bedrock industry in our state. We implore Colorado lawmakers to see this package of legislation for what it is. It's nothing short of a ban. It's time to reject the special interests and get back to productive conversations. With that, I'll turn it over to my friend and colleague, Dan Haley, with the Colorado Oil and Gas Association.
Thank you, Kate. It's good to see everybody here today. Thanks for joining us. In 2019, when Governor Polis signed Senate Bill 181, he declared an end to the oil and gas wars. In the years that followed, Colorado's oil and natural gas industry has diligently worked to meet that moment, serving as a good faith participant in countless rulemakings and other regulatory and executive actions. We believed then, and still do today, that the governor meant what he said. This proposed package of legislation, including its partner bill, Senate Bill 159, pays no mind to the tireless work of Colorado regulators, stakeholders, and everyday residents over the past half-decade. These bills seek to end the oil and natural gas industry in Colorado and upend a $48 billion industry without regard to the livelihoods of the hundreds of thousands of Colorado families and communities who depend on it. We will fight each of these bills, and we intend to explore every available path forward to protect Coloradans from these efforts, which, if successful, will raise energy costs on those who can least afford it. Energy and energy costs drive our economy. There are environmental reasons, economic reasons, and pocketbook reasons for opposing a ban on industry and opposing bills that seek to tie up industry in bureaucratic red tape. Just ask California. When proposed legislation in Colorado literally says, let's follow California, let's impose what California has imposed, well then I say, let's follow California. People are fleeing that state. The cost of living is extraordinarily high. The cost of energy is high when the power is actually on. Rolling brownouts and blackouts have become the norm. They mandate EVs, and then they tell you when you can charge them because they worry about the grid going down. Oil production in California has gone down 60%, but they have not decreased their consumption of it. So tankers of oil from Colombia, Saudi Arabia, and the Amazon rainforest arrived in California. Even Governor Gavin Newsom has conceded that's not an environmental solution. So why would we follow California? Is that the future that we want in Colorado? There's also a geopolitical reason, national security, to vote against the ban or any bills that tie up industry and bureaucratic red tape. We're in the midst of 2 geopolitical crises right now, both of which have massive global energy implications. The continent of Europe was fortunate to find relief in an armada of American natural gas following Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And that continued relief is as needed today as it was the day of the invasion. America is the largest producer of oil and natural gas in the world. Colorado is the 4th largest producer of crude and the 8th largest natural gas producer. What happens here matters elsewhere. Just this past Sunday, Democratic U.S. Senator Michael Bennet laid out strongly and clearly the reason he opposes President Biden's LNG export ban. He could have just as easily been talking about the Jaquez-Lewis-Priola ban. His quote was, "One of the United States' massive strategic strengths is our energy, our clean energy, and our fossil fuels. The ban is a short-sighted decision." He was joined in his opposition of that LNG export ban by Democratic Congresswoman Carabeo, who was a sponsor of Senate Bill 181, but she's worried about the impact any slowdown in industry will have in her district. Senator Bennett's comments deviate from what Senators Priola and Jaquez-Lewis told us. They said they want to ban oil and gas in Colorado because we export it. We hope Democrats in the Colorado State House will see energy as Senator Bennett does and view production and exports as a strategic necessity that can help the world instead of making our allies fend for themselves when madmen are on the march. We need more energy in the world, not less, and we need all forms of energy. Despite what some extreme environmental special interest groups might tell you, they can't phase out natural gas and oil in a single state and call it a climate solution with a straight face. So if you care about climate solutions, you should support affordable, reliable Colorado natural gas and oil and make it the standard which other states and countries should aspire to. When this ban was introduced, we reached out to other people in the business community and asked if they would join us in a letter to Governor Polis and the Colorado General Assembly, asking them to swiftly reject this bill and any others that aim to damage any industry in Colorado, and send a message that Colorado remains open for business and that we're all collectively working on what Governor Polis has called his Colorado for All. Within days, we had more than 50 business groups representing thousands of businesses and hundreds of thousands of employees sign on to this letter, including the Colorado Chamber, Chambers of Commerce from all across the state, Fort Collins, Greeley, Loveland, Pueblo, Grand Junction, and Durango. We have copies of that letter for you today that was sent to the governor and the General Assembly this morning. A few of those folks who signed on to that letter are here to speak to you today and talk about the impacts a ban on industry or any of these bills could have on communities throughout Colorado. So next up, I would like to introduce J.J. Ament, President and CEO of the Denver Metro Chamber of Commerce. Maybe I'll stand as close to that.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm J.J. Ament. I am the President and Chief Executive of the Denver Metro Chamber of Commerce. This year, our chamber celebrates its 158th birthday. So we're about 9 years older than the state of Colorado is. And in all of that time that we've been working, it's for the economic empowerment of every Coloradan. And right now, the biggest risk to Colorado's economy is public policy. And it's public policy that's been created without a thought to the costs and the benefit analysis when they're under it. Now, Colorado, our chamber, about 82% of our chamber members are small businesses. Small businesses. And they employ some 300,000, 400,000 folks in Colorado. They're the ones that will bear the burden of legislation like this, the additional costs. When we're talking about economic development opportunities, Colorado's economic competitiveness, when our Economic Development Corporation is working with those companies who are considering relocations or expansions or investments in Colorado, they're concerned about Colorado's public policy. They're concerned about costs of living for their employees. Cost of doing business are skyrocketing across our state. Colorado is now 38th in the nation in cost of living, 36th in cost of doing business. We hear comments from chief executives that why would I invest in Colorado? I'm already in California. These are not beneficial for Colorado's long-term economic competitiveness, and that gets the chamber's attention. And let me be very clear, the business community is absolutely for air quality, water quality, environmental stewardship. We take a backseat of that to no one. The Denver Metro Chamber and our Economic Development Corporation helped create the Regional Air Quality Commission. We can have economic competitiveness and a solid and quality environment, and we're doing it right now. We don't need additional legislation. We don't need additional regulation, or for sure we don't need a ban on hometown energy production. more than 60 pieces of legislation and rules around air quality just in the last 4 years. We need time to adopt those, let them work. It is working. The idea of raising additional costs of doing business, raising additional costs on folks that are trying to get by in this economy as it is, as we've dropped from one of the nation's top 10 economies to now in the top 15. These are the kind of bills, this is the kind of regulatory uncertainty that harms Colorado's economic competitiveness. And it's not just the metro region, it's all of Colorado. And so to speak for the rural, my rural roots, is Sarah Blackhurst, the president of Action Colorado.
Thank you all for being here today. I am Sarah Blackhurst. I'm the president of Action Colorado, formerly known as Action 22. We serve southern and rural Colorado to create a stronger voice to make sure that those decisions that are made here in Denver don't have the negative impacts, or try to not have the negative impacts that they seem to do every single year. As we get into another legislative session, we're again deeply concerned about the apparent disregard for how decisions made here impact geographically 80% of the state. And those are the parts of the state where all the necessities that are enjoyed here come from. Of course, today we're discussing the effort to eliminate an entire incredibly important industry of oil and gas. The proposed policies that we're talking about today, and other ones that we haven't heard about but are coming, that we know are coming, are wildly irresponsible for two reasons. Number one, Colorado has maybe the highest standards in the country and maybe the world with regard to production of energy. That is something that not only should be modeled, but needs to be acknowledged, celebrated, and owned it. We need to own the fact that Colorado has the highest standards of anybody else. We're constantly meeting goals. The industry is constantly doing more. Every time a goal is set, it's met and gone beyond, and then the goals change. And that's where the problem lies. When you eliminate an industry that is performing so well, you're not helping anything. You're pushing that development, that energy production, to those who don't have anything close to our environmental or humanitarian standards. The second part of that is that it's devastating to the economies of those communities outside the Denver area, not only with regard to jobs and taxes, but without any plan that's reasonable to make those communities whole. With those two things, with those high standards and with the disregard, these are not environmental answers. This isn't going to fix anything on the environmental standards. So it begs the question, what is the real intent? If we're not improving environment and we're not making those communities whole, what is the purpose of these? So with that, I want to turn it over to Cody Kennedy, who is on the Grand Junction City Council, to talk a little bit more about what it means for these communities to be impacted in this negative way.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Cody Kennedy, and as mentioned, I'm on the Grand Junction City Council. I'm not here today on behalf of the City Council. I'm here today on behalf of myself, as somebody who grew up in Colorado, who has spent the last almost 20 years serving my community. Most of that as a police officer for the City of Grand Junction. My wife served in our community as a teacher, and along the way, we've worked in the affordable housing area by buying a few rental houses when we could. We love Grand Junction, we love Colorado, and this legislation is so impactful in Western Colorado. I want you to feel that with me, because we will feel it in Grand Junction. I have a tenant that's rented a house for me for almost 20 years. That's been in the oil and gas industry the whole time, and this impacts his job directly. The contempt of the Front Range to say, oh, we'll just retrain him, put him in the recreation industry or something else. It doesn't work that way. And Grand Junction does feel this and experience it. I serve with the Grand Junction Economic Partnership, Associated Governments of Western Colorado. I'm also involved with the Chamber in Grand Junction. So I am talking to businesses all the time. And this matters. If we were going to do good things for Colorado and not go after and possibly hurt the most economically fragile people within our economy, we'd be looking for opportunities to make the best of what we have. We have a huge natural gas supply in Western Colorado. Why wouldn't we look at creating energy security? Why wouldn't we be thinking about what can we do that's good for Colorado? Instead of saying, what can we do to damage Colorado? And certainly as we look at our rural communities, the impact of a lost job in a rural community is so much greater than it might be here in the Front Range. And I say that to you in all humility, but please know, a job lost in the Front Range if a job is lost in Western Colorado and rural Colorado, there's 18 times more impact on the economy. And we feel that. So please consider us, your Western Colorado neighbors, as you consider this type of legislation that is not good for Colorado. Thanks.
We are open for questions if anyone has any additional questions.
So I believe one of the bills talks about during the summer having all electric sites. Are there any oil and gas sites in Colorado that currently use all electric equipment, and is that even possible?
So, great question. The question's about, are there sites that use all electric equipment in Colorado? So one of the bills would put a ban on drilling in the summertime unless you're using an electric drilling rig. The first issue I would have with that is to assume that oil and gas drilling is causing the ozone problem in Colorado. It is a very small part of the overall ozone problem in Colorado. The bill, as I understand it, would allow electric drilling rigs in the summertime. Our members are investing millions of dollars in infrastructure, in green, clean technology to bring into Colorado. We are bringing electric rigs into the basin. But to do that, to bring that technology and investment into Colorado, you need capital, you need investment. And to get capital and investment, you need stability and regulatory certainty and political certainty. And when you introduce bills that say we're going to ban this industry in 2029, stop drilling in 2032, it's hard to get that investment into our state. There are electric drilling rigs here now. That raises another issue. Can you get power to the site to power those rigs? How many rigs can you bring in and have enough power on the grid to do that? And then there's another piece of that is you're plugging that in to something. Coal plant? So are you just trading your emissions for a technology that's favored by somebody? There's a lot of complicated questions here, but our industry is working very hard to bring that technology into the state, but again, need that stability and that certainty in order to do so.
But currently, do you know of any site that's all electric right now?
There are sites that have electric drilling rigs, but in terms of when you mean all electric, I don't know exactly what you mean. There are definitely sites that use electric drilling rigs. It's more feasible on the Front Range, less feasible on the Western Slope, just based on how far we are away from power sources.
You mentioned Senator Bennett in your political arguments. Do you have any Democrats? Why don't you ask Senator Bennett to speak out for you then? If you're using him as an argument here, why don't you call him up and have him support your argument everywhere?
Well, I think Senator Bennett did a great job of making our argument for us on the Sunday morning talk shows when he said he opposed this export ban.
So why isn't he supporting your position now?
I don't know that he's not. I would like to believe, if he truly believes one of our greatest strengths is our ability to export natural gas, then I believe he would be opposed to this ban as well, but I've not had that conversation.
Any Democrats support your position?
But we'll find out. We are hopeful that some reasonable Democrats will stand up and kill this bill as soon as it's in committee.
Dan, why don't you just address the international climate picture? I mean, we've had the Secretary General of the UN say investing in fossil fuel infrastructure is moral and economic madness, that's not compatible with the Paris Climate Accords. What do you say? That's wrong, or that Colorado should be accepted on those agreements?
I'm sorry, what was the last part?
Should Colorado be an exception given our regulations?
No, I think, so the question was about climate change, what's happening with the Paris Climate Accords. The first thing I would say is the United States is the only major economy that's actually achieved the environmental benchmarks set out in the Paris Climate Accords because of our increased use of natural gas. We share the concerns that many people have over climate, which is why our industry is doing all we can to get cleaner and better, why we are bringing down emissions. We brought down emissions more than 50% here in the DJ Basin. So that's incumbent upon us to understand the concerns that people have and to know that we have to get cleaner, better, and safer, and to show that data. Right now, we roll up thousands of data points to the state, monitoring air across the Front Range and showing that those emissions are coming down. My point here is Colorado can't be the only state that eliminates fossil fuels or eliminates oil and gas and nobody else is doing. We are less than one quarter of 1 percentage point of global greenhouse gases in Colorado. Should we continue to lower our emissions in the state? Absolutely. It's the right thing to do. Are we going to solve the world's problems from Colorado?
Kate Schwartz with the American Petroleum Institute, Colorado. We are using more coal in the world today than we ever have in the history of the world. We need more energy, not less. We need more oil and gas. We need more renewables. We need more of every form of energy. We have more people. We have more need than we ever have, and it's going to keep going up. So until we are able to fill those gaps, we shouldn't be taking anything off the table.
Is there anything, and I don't know if you have time to read the legislation yet, but are there any points that you would support that these lawmakers are proposing that you think you could support?
I have not read all of the legislation. My understanding that one of the bills would codify into law the governor's NOx directives, which I would be fine with. Last March, the governor sent a letter to the oil and gas industry asking us to lower our NOx emissions by 30% by 2025 and 50% by 2030. We are going to meet that target 2025. We are actively working on that every single day, and we're actively working on meeting that 2030 target. To me, that's how we should talk about oil and natural gas regulations in Colorado. If clean air is the goal, if a better environment is the goal, then give us the benchmarks and let us go out and hit it using technology, innovation, science. So if they want to codify that into law, I would support that.
Bottom line, if these bills pass, what would that mean for your industry?
It all depends on which bills. I think if you have we think there's probably going to be about a dozen bills targeting oil and gas introduced to the legislature this year. And I think the point that we were trying to make is we have been working at this for years now. We have come to the table. We have been a part of dozens of rulemakings, examining every part of our industry to bring down our emissions, to make us cleaner, better, and safer. And we will continue to do that and come to the table. But right now, when you have somebody who's trying to ban this industry, we're going to fight that.
In the trio of bills introduced today, one takes up the permitting issue again. Last year, they ran a bill that addressed oil and gas permitting, and y'all said this would essentially make it so no new permits can be issued. Have you seen what they proposed this year under those tweaks? Make it any more palatable to you?
I would just say out of these 4 bills, and there are 4 of them, they're all the same sponsors. One of them is a ban outright. 3 of them are more discrete bans. None of them are reasonable. None of them are reasonable conversations. None of them contemplate the conversations that we had during the Ozone Interim Committee, any of the stakeholder meetings that we've had with them to date. These are environmental special interest groups that are hosting these stakeholder meetings. Lawmakers don't even know what are in their bills right now. So no, I don't think there is anything reasonable in these 4 sets of bills.
So what would be reasonable to you? And what regulations would you support?
Well, to Dan's point, we have a roadmap set out for us right now. We have the GHG roadmap. The governor recently said in January that the oil and gas industry has done our part. We are meeting and exceeding our goals on a number of levels when it comes to GHG, when it comes to NOx, et cetera. We have the next 10 years spelled out for us probably due to all the rulemakings that we've been through. And again, that's not a problem. We will meet those goals, we will exceed those goals. We have operators that are incredibly innovative, and we look forward to that.
Can you just explain, to what extent is the oil and gas industry responsible for ozone?
Questions about to what extent is the industry responsible for ozone? Models and monitoring data show that we are a small portion of the ozone issue here in Colorado, much less than vehicles, much less than what's naturally occurring, much less than what flows in from other states. The non-attainment area, oil and gas, doesn't account for even 10% of the total ozone, according to source apportionment studies. Oil and gas, on average, is about 3 to 7% of the total ozone in the non-attainment area, according to state data. And I would just add one other thing too. The director of the air quality, Regional Air Quality Council said on a podcast recently, if we shut down the entire oil and gas industry, we wouldn't achieve the summertime ozone standards in Colorado.
I think we'll take one more question.
That's great too. Fantastic. Thank you all for coming here. We appreciate it. Always reach out if you have questions.